Hello, my name is Claudia Kitchens, and I had the honor and privilege of serving as the executive director of the Miami Women's Fund for almost 10 years. And I'd really like to start at the beginning of my story because it actually was long before I started as a professional. I was actually at some of the very first meetings when our founder, Marilyn Gladstone, convened community leaders, women who really cared about the issues of women and girls. Some of us called ourselves feminists. Some were just really caring women. But we all knew that we wanted a place. And that's really what the Women's Fund initially was. We were all thrilled to come together because it was a space for all of us to come together and hopefully create a voice and a message for the community. So it was early 1990s, and Marilyn Gladstone had been at several meetings nationally because the concept of a women's fund or a women's foundation was just being created in cities across the country. And why were they doing this? There had been some national research that had showed that with the big major national foundations and community foundations, when two equal programs came up for deliberation, the men's programs, surprisingly, always got more money than the women's programs. And the people sitting around the table were usually always men or vast majority male. So there was really a lack of equity in funding. And so women came together and they said, we can raise the money and we can make the decisions on how it's going to be distributed, and we can really help the women and girls in our community. So in the early 90s, we had some wonderful meetings and convenings because we all really had to learn about the concept of a women's fund or a women's foundation because it was really a new concept. So several very talented people ran it for multiple years, and they did a wonderful job. And I had the fortune of being hired to start my first day of work on January 2nd, 2000, which was the first work day of the 21st century. So, wow. And I was welcomed by an amazing group of women, the board of directors, and one phenomenal staff person, Fran Katz. And we all came together and we made a decision. We were going to go big and we were going to go bold. And that's just what we did. And our first focus was really on grant making. And we as a community sitting around the table said, you know, we know exactly what we want to do. We want to provide funding to emerging leaders, women who are working in diverse communities across Miami, and they know the women and girls that are not being served, and they know their unique needs. And we're going to be first time, we loved it. We thought it was so empowering that we were going to be first time funders to some people that never even knew how they were going to get their first grant. In fact, we ran classes on how do you write a grant. And we had this wonderful process. We published it throughout the community, and we really went big. Simultaneously, we also had to be creating resources to make those grants that we wanted to make. And so we really worked on building our community of donors. And one of the things that we were really committed to initially, besides the grant making, was really talking to women and educating women about a woman's role as a philanthropist, that we as women can create social justice and social change with our own resources. And when women do stuff, they just don't write a check. And that was part of what we did all along. When we convened our first group of grantees, we just didn't write a check. We built a community. We provided mentorship. We provided training. We brought them together because we wanted people who were working with women and girls in Homestead, Opelika, Overtown, and North Miami Beach to all have opportunities to get together, to share wisdom, to share challenges, and to really be supportive. And it really worked. And we really built a community. And there's just a couple of stories I want to tell about just two of the first grantees that we made the grants to in the year 2000. And they were $5,000 grants. And one went to an organization called Urgent Inc. Miami. It was a brand new organization. It was first funding for the wonderful team that was putting this together, because they realized there were really special needs for the young women living in the Overtown community. And they wanted to bring social, economic, and educational resources to these young women, providing after school summer experiences. And the other program was then called Thomas Armour Youth Ballet. Now it's called Armour Dance Theater. And they also received a $5,000 grant to expand their programming so that they could actually provide dance and after school programming in more diverse communities across Miami-Dade, because one of their goals is to diversify the world of ballet. And they knew that a young girl from the Goulds area couldn't get up after school and get driven to a dance program. So we thought, this is wonderful. It's inclusive and it's broadening the community and bringing people together. Well, I want to tell you, 23 years later, both of these programs are still very much in existence. And our little $5,000 grant, along with our mentoring and our caring and our support, both of these organizations are now $1 million budgets for the work that they're doing. We just planted a seed. We gave them a few initial good pushes. They are remarkable teams, do the work themselves. But we all took pride in knowing that we helped launch some really important programs. And there are many more. I could talk for 2 hours about the grantees and the impact that we have made over the years. So grant making was really, really important. But then we also had to raise the money. And how are we going to do that? Well, there was a lovely luncheon that the Women's Fund had every year. And we decided that since we're going big and we're going bold, that we were going to change the name of the luncheon. We kind of stole the term power of the purse from another women's fund, and they were happy to let us share it with them, because we thought it was such an important message that, yes, women, with your purse, you have the power to make social change and equity for women in your community. And we grew and grew and grew the luncheon. There were 1,100 women. It was like the biggest luncheon in Miami-Dade County. And we were really, really making an inroads into the community and really empowering women to understand that they had a voice, that they had the ability to make change, and that they can actually be part of the philanthropic world. You know, when we would talk, people go, oh, philanthropists are men who give away, $50 million. And we said, no, philanthropists are people who give an appropriate donation and care about their community and what the community needs to be and recognizes the need. So the luncheon became and still is to this day, this spectacular event. So, I know people who are still very active from the original board and the original supporters, and they go, can you believe it? Here we are all these years later doing all of this work. There's one thing that I really like to tell the story of, and that is in the grant making process, we did something called site visits. And the site visits were especially important to me because of the end result. We would invite groups of 2 or 3 women to get together. And most often the site visitors were donors or potential donors. So they were often ladies from more affluent neighborhoods. And we would ask them to go and visit 2 or 3 of the applicants for our grants that year. And they would go with a series of questions and evaluate. But the power was when they came back and talked to us about the personal experience that it had been for them. Many of these women, caring women, bright women, they had never been to some of the neighborhoods that they went to. And they really didn't know many people from those neighborhoods. And friendships developed. They would come back and they'd say, I met the most amazing women and they are so dedicated to their community. We have to fund this program. And if we didn't have enough resources, they'd call up some of their friends and say, I had an experience like nothing you've ever seen before. I was in XYZ part of our town and I met the most powerful women. And we have to gather the money together so that this wonderful lady can do the work that she wants to do. So, it was a wonderful part of it. How do you build community in Miami-Dade County, which is so diverse, so large, so wonderful, but also so very, very challenging. And we had the ability to bring people together, to share their life experience, and to all come together around the issues of women and girls. Of course, if you're making grants and you're working with women and creating new circles of philanthropy, the next really important thing that happens is everybody becomes advocates. Because when you really understand what the need is, and if you can in any way influence, educate, or cause people to really begin to understand what the issues are and making change. So we all became advocates, and now the Women's Fund is truly an advocacy organization. So it's really wonderful to see that some of the seeds we planted are just growing and growing and growing. I didn't do all of this alone at all. I had the most amazing board of directors, women who were so committed to the mission and gave so much time, I can't even begin to tell you. And I had a dream team staff, Tiffany, Fran, and Sophie. I mean, the four of us would sit around in meetings and we knew that, boy, this is something. We are really doing it. And the sense of pride that we all had was really kind of remarkable, because we were a team and we just knew we could make this happen. And everything we did, we had the full support of our board of directors and also their visionary leadership. We worked as a team. So it was really fun. And I think the thing that most demonstrates the level of support is that in our being big and being bold, we said, we're going to launch the endowment for the Women's Fund. The Women's Fund had never had an endowment, and we set a goal of $1 million. And women came forward. We didn't quite make our goal, but we did really well. And women came forward and wrote checks in the sizes of $50,000 and $100,000. Things that they never even dreamt that they would do. And they were doing it because they so believed in this mission. And this is a mission that becomes more viable every day. How do we create equity? How do we create fairness? And how do we give women and girls the voice that they need? And that's really what it was all about. And not that it's just those women that shared that belief, but I thought that really demonstrated that they would give that sizable personal gift to an organization, and they really wanted to leave a legacy. And now the legacy is everyone else, you need to move forward. You have to think big and bold. And I know under the current leadership and board that the Women's Fund has, we are on the road. So I thank you all so much for all the work you're doing today. And thanks for the memories.